Okay, so let's say the accounts receivable department at a utilities company you work for would like to automate a monthly payment reminder to customers, just to get them to pay their invoice if they have not done so already. So if you open up the spreadsheet you had just downloaded, you can see each row has details of a customer. So what the values for each row in a cell, what for each cell in a row is labeled with the columns up at the top. So we have the company's name, the email for their accounts payable department, and their payment status for each month. If they have already paid for that month, it'll be marked with the text paid. But you can see not every company has paid in the most recent months. So let's say accounts payable uses this Excel spreadsheet to keep track of paid invoices, because let's face it, even if technology has advanced significantly, some employees will be still stuck in their ways and may find Excel a lot easier to use than some sophisticated software that can keep track of this kind of thing for you. So what we're first going to have to do is we're going to have to open up the command prompt terminal and install a module. So go ahead and click launch. And then once you're on here, you're going to have to install the package EasyGmail. So pip install EasyGmail. Go ahead and press enter. And then since I already have it installed, it says requirement already satisfied for me. But for you, it will go ahead and install it for you. So now you're going to navigate to Visual Studio Code. So on Visual Studio Code, you're going to open up your TD3 folder. I couldn't do this on camera just because my screen recorder won't be able to capture File Explorer. But yeah, just create a TD3 folder and then input credentials JSON into your folder. And then we're going to click File, Open Folder to open the TD3 folder. You're going to navigate to it and then select Folder. And then it's going to open up inside the left navigation bar here. And then once it's open, you can hit File, New File, and then Python file. You can go ahead and save this to the same folder, TD3. Make sure it's the same folder, just so that our code can access the credentials JSON file. You can rename this to, let's see, email reminder, camel toad. Okay. And then what we're first gonna do is we're gonna import EasyGmail OS. Make sure this is a comma. I'm gonna make a new line and then type OS CHDIR and then open parentheses R quotation marks, and then what you're gonna do is you're gonna navigate and locate your credentials JSON file, and then for Windows users you can right click and then inside the little window click on properties, and then the file path should be under location. You're gonna copy that file path. For Mac users, I'm gonna Google something and then insert documentation on how to find this file path for you guys. But I already copied and pasted it, and then this is what it should look like. And then we're gonna use EasyGmail and the method init. Okay, and then save it, and then you're gonna run Python file in terminal. Now the EasyGmail init function will open up your browser to a Google sign-in page, and we'll just log in. I'm gonna log into my Gmail, the one that you use to enable the Gmail API. And if you get an error message like this, make sure you're logged into the right Gmail account. And then try again. Try until you see this page pop up. This is the correct page you should be seeing, and then click continue, and then continue again. You know that the last step was successful if you read success down here inside the terminal. Now you're going to import, open PyExcel, separate with a comma, and then SMT plib, separate with a comma again, and then sys. Sys is going to give us access to some system variables. Next, we're going to open up our invoice paid Excel spreadsheet and store it into a variable called workbook. We're going to abbreviate ours to just WB, and then we're going to open PyExcel, and then .load workbook, and then use the name of our Excel spreadsheet, invoice paid here. When I was an Excel spreadsheet, use Excel SX. So open PyExcel is a Python library that gives us access to read and write Excel files. And then the load workbook method will load the Excel file, which we identified here as invoice paid. And within these parentheses, we'll pass it to load workbook. We're going to then create another variable called sheet, and then assign it to the workbook, and then get sheet by name. And then our sheet just happens to be called sheet 1. I think that's the default name for your first sheet on Excel. And then now, by doing so, we can access rows, columns, and cells within the worksheet. So we'll create another variable called last call, short for last column, sheet.max column. So max column is just the highest column inside our worksheet. In our case, it's the most recent month we're tracking for payments. Latest month will be our next variable we'll define. And then we're going to assign it to sheet.call. And then row 1 column would be our last call. And then .value. So we're going to define our latest variable here, latest month here as a variable, and then assign it to row 1, and then the column last call to access the cell that should hold the most recent month. This will give us the value in this cell and store it inside the latest month. So all of this so far is just to access the information on the Excel file. But in the next steps, we're going to find out all the unpaid companies by looping through all the rows after the first row, which our first row is just the column label. If you go back to your Excel spreadsheet, you can see that our row 1 inside our Excel spreadsheet is just the company labels, the column labels, so company, email, and then the months. Then our last column is our latest month that we're tracking for payments. So the latest month variable will see the value here, our latest month. But with each loop, it will see which companies have the text paid in the cell for the month. If the program finds any value that's not the string paid, then it will collect the company's name and their email address for their accounts payable from the first 2 columns and track them in a dictionary that we're going to define here. So we're going to name this dictionary unpaid companies. We're going to assign it to an empty dictionary to hold future records inputted by this loop. We'll then use a for loop to loop around all the rows after the first row. So for I in range, starting from the second row, and then we're going to add 1 sheet.max row on the sheet to move on to the next row every time the loop is run. So add +1. And then don't forget the colon. So after the colon, we're going to lay out what happens when the loop is run. Payment is equal to sheet.cell. And then we're going to define where exactly this cell is. So we're going to define the variable payment and assign it to the value with the most recent column for each row. So this can be either one of two things, a string paid or an empty cell. We're then going to use a nested conditional if statement within the for loop. So if payment is not equal to the string paid, so if payment is not equal to the string paid, we'll collect the company name and email. So we're going to create a variable called name to store the value of all the companies who did not pay for that month. And then we're going to access this information through the sheet and then the cell wherever that cell is. And the coordinates will be defined inside the parentheses. So row is equal to R, column is equal to 1. 1, remember the first column was the names of the companies, and then the value. The value be stored within the name variable. Change this to R. Copy this over because we're pretty much doing the same thing for email. Okay, so just to go over this one more time, we know that the column for all the company names is held inside column 1 on our spreadsheet, and then the email addresses are located in column 2 of our spreadsheet. And then the pending value, we'll grab the value of that corresponding cell that says not paid, so the cell will be empty because they did not pay. And then the value would then be stored inside the variable name and then the variable email, respectively. To add these to the unpaid companies dictionary we created earlier, we're going to type unpaid companies and then name is equal to email. After the loop finishes compiling a list of unpaid companies, we're going to start sending them those email reminders to pay their invoices. But before we can do that, we have to log in to an email account. So to do that, use SMTP object and the port. So what we're doing here is we're creating an SMTP object, which is Simple Mail Transfer Protocol for short, and then we're going to assign it to SMTP lib.smtp, and then pass the domain name for Gmail, and then Gmail's port number. 587 as a port number is pretty common for most email providers, and it's Gmail's as well. Oh, and before we do anything else, we'll have to import getPass. So import getPass, which this will prompt us to enter the email account password every time the program is run, and this will help us to not have to store this password in this source code. We'll then create a variable called password, and this will store a password in this variable. I recommend this password to be the app password we had generated earlier. So it would be getPass.pass, and typing getPass, and you type getPass twice, once to reference the module and then the second to get a pass function to get the password from the user input. Also, let's go back and comment our second and third line since we don't need it anymore. And it may mess up our program when we go to run it again. Okay, so back to where we were. We're going to do smtp object dot hello. And we're going to call an hello to say hello to the SMTP email server, and this will establish a connection to the server. We're going to do SMTP object again, and then start TLS. And start TTLS enables encryption for our connection, and then we'll do it once more, SMTP object dot login, and then you're gonna pass your email address, and mine was and then pass the password variable that we created. So this login method will pass our email address and then account password we had stored in the password variable. It'll then prompt you inside the terminal when we go to run it to enter your password each time you run the program, just to avoid saving our password. Thank you. Okay, so we'll scroll back here. Okay, now in this part of the program, it should go through a list of unpaid companies inside the unpaid companies dictionary up here. So we're going to do a for loop for that. So for name, pass name, email, in unpaid companies, dot items. So it's going to analyze the items within the list of name and email, and it's going to return key value pairs. We're going to make another for loop and then create the contents of the email here. We'll create a variable to store a message in. So it'll be called body, and then it's going to be equal to subject. This is what the client will see. %, please paid. And then we're going to use /n to break up and make a new line. Dear, to greet the customer, and then %s. Ooh, misplaced a comma. And then /n again to make a new line. And then we're going to personalize it with the company name right here, which we're going to define later. Another /, and then to finish off the message, we're going to add a standard message. It's going to be something like records show that you have not paid the utilities invoice for, and then we're going to personalize again for the company, %s. Please make this payment as soon as possible. Thank you. Okay, so we'll scroll back here. So except for these personalized parts in our email, as indicated with this %s sign, everything should be the same email every company gets in this body message. Now, to describe the %s sign we used in this body, we're going to add % here, and we're going to add opening parentheses, latest month, since the first one has to do with the most recent invoice. We're going to pull up the latest month to reference the name of the company for the second %s sign, and then latest month again. You should order you should order these in the order that you want them to appear. Percent indicates a value inside this list, and then S indicates that it's a string. So an example of what this message could read is that it could be subject December 2023, invoice unpaid. Dear ABC, records show that you have not paid the utilities invoice for December 2023. Please make this payment as soon as possible. Thank you. Now, just for us to visually see what is happening when our code is being run, we'll print out who we're sending an email to. So create a new line. We're gonna do print sending email to, and then use the percent sign again to personalize it to the email address. So we're gonna do ... and then afterwards we're gonna do percent email to indicate what that percent is for. We'll then create a variable send mail status. Send mail status. We're going to assign it to SMTP object dot send mail, and then it's going to be your email address, and then email, and then body. So we're going to pass along your email, the email of the company that needs to pay their invoice, and then the message, which is stored inside the body. Now if the send mail method works and there's no error in sending the email, the dictionary will return empty. But in reverse, if there's an error in sending an email, send mail will return a non-empty dictionary. This is where this if statement comes into play. So we're going to do if send mail status is not equal to an empty dictionary. We're going to print there was a problem sending email to personalize it so we know who exactly the error came up for. Then %9 again. And then we're going to describe what these personalized values should be. So first one should be email, and then the second one should be send mail status. Okay, let me explain to you what's going on here. So this if statement will check to see if send mail status is not empty, their dictionary, which means that the email has not been successfully sent. If it's not empty, then it will print out there was a problem sending email to, and then they're going to put the company email and then the status of that send mail. So an example of how this could be read is that there was a problem sending an email to ABC and then print out the return dictionary. And finally, for the final line, we'll use the quit method to disconnect from the SMTP server. So don't forget a colon here. A colon here. And then we're going to do SMTP object dot quit. Okay, this code looks good. We're going to save it, and then we're going to run Python file in terminal. We're going to try that again. Run Python in terminal. Okay, looks like it works. Because it's going to ask us to enter the password here, I suggest you manually enter it instead of copying and pasting it. Just because it could be finicky because you can't really see when you enter the password. But once you finish entering it, press enter. Also, don't forget the spaces in between the sections of your password. And then it looks like it ran successfully because it's sending, it's printing out, it's sending email to these accounts. Okay, cool. That's all for TD3. Please go ahead and screenshot the output you get from the terminal here, where it's printing out sending email to, and then the accounts payable email addresses, and then paste it into your answer sheet. But before you go, there's one last deliverable. It's super simple. Just give me feedback on what topics you would like to see in future TDs, or feedback on how you like the current ones so far. If you hate them and how I do them, or think the topics are boring, irrelevant, etc., just let me know in the deliverable. But if you enjoy them and find them informative, also let me know in the deliverable. Or if you have no opinion of anything, just say, have a nice break, smiley face, and turn that in for credit. Okay, that's all for now. Have a nice winter break, guys. Bye.